I grew up in Oakland, a place that's supposed to represent diversity. When I started at a Mandarin immersion school, I thought I was joining something that would bring cultures together. I imagined language as a bridge, a way to understand, respect, and connect. But what I found was that learning another culture's language doesn't guarantee they'll want to learn yours. And that's where real education begins, in learning how to see each other fully, in every shade. The biggest reason this cultural mix failed was communication, not vocabulary or grammar, but the deeper kind, how people choose to express respect, emotion, and truth. Communication is the heartbeat of every collaboration. It's how empathy travels, how ideas are shared, how conflict is repaired. When it breaks, everything else, teamwork, creativity, even compassion, begins to unravel. In Chinese classrooms, silence and subtlety often show maturity. You pause, you weigh every word. In Black American spaces, voice and rhythm are respect. Showing up with energy means you care enough to engage. Neither style is wrong, but when no one explains the difference, mutual understanding turns into mutual misjudgment. I spoke up because I wanted to connect. They stayed quiet because they wanted to show respect. Each side mistook the other's intent. Researchers like Elliott 2007 and Liu 2016 confirm that these mismatches shape how multicultural classrooms succeed or fail. They show that students aren't excluded because they lack skill, but because their style doesn't match the dominant expectation. And that's the tragedy. The very spaces meant to build bridges can end up reinforcing walls, all because the foundation, communication, isn't understood as the most vital thing we share. But communication doesn't just connect us, it transforms us. The first thing I noticed in my Mandarin immersion school wasn't the words I didn't understand, it was the atmosphere. Certain students seemed to fit naturally into the picture of what belonged. Others, like me, didn't quite match that image. No one said it out loud, but I could feel it, being one of 2 Black students in the whole school when I started and of 1 when I left. That quiet divide was proof of colorism, the idea that lighter skin, straighter hair, and certain facial features sit closer to the ideal. Colorism isn't just an Asian thing or a Black thing. It's a global inheritance. It lives in every place colonization or class hierarchy ever touched. In China, light skin once signified wealth, a person who didn't labor in the sun. In Latin America, centuries of colonial rule created racial mixing categories that still rank lighter tones higher. In South Asia, entire industries sell skin-lightening products, promising opportunity in a bottle. And in the United States, colorism has existed both inside and outside the Black community, a shadow cast by slavery and segregation that still shapes perception and privilege today. Monk 2021 calls this skin tone stratification, a social order that crosses every ethnic line, rewarding those who appear closer to whiteness. And Lee and Zhou 2022 show how that preference has intertwined with anti-Blackness in Chinese and Chinese American spaces, not always through hate, but through inherited fear and the quiet pursuit of status. Understanding that doesn't excuse it, but it opens a path for empathy. When we recognize that colorism was built by systems larger than any one culture, we can stop blaming individuals and start questioning the systems themselves. That empathy is key. It lets us see that people of every background are fighting versions of the same struggle, the urge to be accepted by a world that still treats lightness as a ticket to safety. If schools and communities could teach this history openly, students might realize that their differences aren't just barriers. They're clues pointing to a shared experience of surviving inequality. And that's how healing begins, by turning recognition into responsibility and empathy into action. Seeing it up close hurt, but I've learned that empathy has to run both ways. To understand colorism, we have to recognize the insecurity beneath it, the human desire to belong, to be safe in a system that rewards proximity to power. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains why it persists. If the bias comes from fear, then the answer has to come from courage, the courage to unlearn what beauty and intelligence look like. What I wish our school had done was name it out loud, to say, this exists. It's in history, in media, and sometimes in us. Because when students learn why bias exists, they can start choosing empathy instead of imitation. When we practice empathy, really listen, and encourage one another across differences, something incredible happens. The discomfort that multicultural spaces can create becomes fuel for creativity. Diverse teams who learn to talk through tension don't just get along, they innovate. Psychologists and business researchers say that mixed culture groups who engage in open dialogue significantly outperform homogeneous groups in solving complex problems, precisely because they're forced to see from multiple angles. That's what our school never taught us, that disagreement isn't danger, it's data. When teachers frame communication as the shared project, not just grammar drills or polite listening, but real empathy in action, difference becomes an engine, not an obstacle. So the goal of multicultural education shouldn't be perfect harmony. It should be practiced empathy. If we can learn to listen beyond accent, volume, or tone, then the same tension that once divided us can become the spark that drives innovation, understanding, and genuine community.